All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. All right. So there are basically two things I'm focused on in the equity markets. We should make that clear because there's a lot of different markets when you follow a lot of different ones. But in terms of the stock market, there's two things I really want to focus on here. And one is that interest rates have blasted off. Yeah, look at this. So this is the 10-year yield. Remember, this is the inverse of the bond. So this kind of sets the stage for a move higher, right? A lot of times when you get a move higher and you break through resistance, like we have, right, there tends to be support. I mean, resistance at former support levels, because you have people that bought back here who are finally trying to sell and get out at break even after waiting for months. So it creates resistance at levels that were support. But I think the interesting thing to watch here is that the level that had been resistance is converting into support. And this sets the stage for a move higher. You could see the same action right here, right? So this was resistance. It looks like we're going to get above it. You could actually take that back to there. And then profit selling comes in or profit taking comes in. The market kind of consolidates. What was resistance converts into support. Remorseful sellers buying their shares back, or in this case, their bonds, sets the stage for a move higher. And I think that's kind of what we're looking at right now here. Things just generally don't blast through resistance and go up, significantly. If they do, then you play the reversal. But in a situation like this, we got through this resistance. Now we're consolidating. Markets don't go up in straight lines. They're like a staircase of trading ranges. One trading range becomes the next trading range, and what was the top of that range becomes the bottom of the next range. So to me, I don't know. It looks like interest rates are going to go higher here, which obviously is going to be bearish for markets. The other thing I'm kind of really looking at here is what's going on in the healthcare sector. Let's see. Let's take a look at that. Oh, look at that. So healthcare stocks are really starting to break down here. I mean, tech gets all the attention, but there are other sectors. And look at this, right? So this is a situation where the resistance level became support because you have people who sold back here and they regret selling when the price goes higher. And they're like, oh, if it ever gets back to my price, I'm going to buy my shares back. So when it eventually gets back to what was resistance, remorseful sellers placing buy orders can turn what was resistance into support. But I mean, this is a kind of a clear breakdown here. Look at that. So there are going to be some serious trading ideas in the healthcare sector, which we had talked about. This is nothing new here. If you follow me, and I assume you do, because you wouldn't be listening to me if you didn't. I mean, there's going to be some. I think healthcare can, at least this ETF has got another couple more points in here. So if we go and we look at the fact sheet of the ETF and we see the stocks that are in it, I mean, we know J&J or Eli Lilly, United Health. So let's look at them. All right. So Eli Lilly. I don't see anything there. United Health. I don't see anything here yet, but if this breaks below 550 or so, that's where I'm going to jump in there. Johnson and Johnson. You could just trade the ETF too. I mean, yeah. So Johnson and Johnson starts to get below this 160 level. That's where I'm jumping in. All right. So interest rates blasting higher. Healthcare looks weak. Let's look at the S&P. We're just looking at the ETFs here. This looks kind of neutral, but this is kind of masking some of the weakness. Let's look at the tech sector. Yeah, here we are. We're all descending triangle pattern, right? Resistance became support. Buyers are hanging out. Sellers are getting more aggressive. That doesn't explain it. Let's Let's look at the consumer discretionary sector. Wow, look at that. Here's a perfect example of what was resistance becomes support. Industrials. Whoops, sorry. Let me make sure I get the XLI. Yeah, this looks like it's starting to break down here. All right. So anyway, I mean, you get the point. I mean, I hate CNN because they're basically a propaganda machine. But every now and then, I look at this Fear and Greed Index. Let's see what it says now. Greed. Well, when people are really greedy, what does it mean? It means the buyers are going to run out of money. But nothing major over there. Look at the AAI sentiment. This looks kind of normal too here. But anyway, all this stuff, it's like whatever. It always goes back to price action. Price action is the most important thing. Let's look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA's holding up, but I guess if there's really kind of like one thing to key in on over the next week, will the level that was resistance become support? So far it has, but if NVIDIA breaks this support, that's going to these are one of these situations where you could just focus on kind of like one stock and it'll give you insight into what the broader market's going to do. And look at Microsoft here as well. Yeah, not too much for signals here. There is a pretty interesting thing going on in Apple. So Apple, which is still the biggest stock in the market, got to a level that had been resistance before, right up around here, like 236, 237. Notice how back here in July it was resistance. It's become resistance again. There is a logical reason why a level that was resistance before can become resistance again. It has to do with psychology. It's buyer's remorse. There are people that bought shares up here who, once it fell out of bed the day after or 2 days after, they're like, I made a mistake. This sucks. If it ever gets back to my price, I'm going to get out at break even. So when it finally here 3 or 4 months later gets back up to this peak, these remorseful buyers are placing sell orders. There tends to be resistance at levels that had been peaks before. And it's not just a wives' tale or a myth, it's because of psychology. Now, the next thing is that some of the investors and traders who wanted to sell start to get nervous. They start to think, oh, gee, I know the buyers are going to go to whoever is willing to sell the lowest price. So I better reduce the price I'm willing to sell at. Other sellers see that and do the same thing. And it can cause this like snowball effect here. So Apple looks kind of weak. Microsoft looks kind of neutral. I think this is going to be a market over this next week, which is going to be relatively easy because it's kind of all about NVIDIA here. My guess is it breaks the support and goes lower because we talked about healthcare, we talked about interest rates. But if there's one thing to watch, it's this. All right, everybody. Hope that helps. Make sure you check back in here because there's going to be some profits to be made. There's going to be some. I would think there's going to be some pretty significant volatility here as we go into the election, and we will see what happens. Actually, you know what? I can't leave you with that. I'm going to go look at some of these alternative energy ETFs. Look at this one. I mean, if you just listen to the market, this would tell you that Kamala is going to lose. I mean, who the hell knows? Everyone says the market knows. But we're setting up a big descending triangle pattern here. Looks like the support is breaking. All right, I got to write that down. All right, let's look at the fan, the wind stocks. This doesn't look as bad. But again, you can see the same stuff we just talked about, right? So very different than NVIDIA. But what's not different is the people that are doing the trading. And just like we talked about, you tend to get resistance at former resistance levels. I mean, look at this, right? Considering all that's going on, you got the election, you got subsidies, you got this, you got that, you got the other thing. Where does this ETF find resistance? basically exactly at the same level that it found it back in January, right? You don't need to be a former hedge fund trader to see that. And then once again, we get to resistance, sellers start undercutting each other, price goes lower. All right, well, I don't know. I mean, just looking at these ETFs, these alternative energy ETFs, doesn't seem like the investors in them have much confidence that Kamala is going to win. All right. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Please check in. There's going to be a lot going on over the next couple of days or next couple of weeks. And yeah, hopefully I can walk you through it.